for joining me. Today we're going to be releasing some really freaking deep wounds. These wounds have affected not just us women and the feminine in this world, but the masculine itself. We are going to be releasing the fear of the masculine. I know, deep. For majority of human history, well, let's just say the men haven't been super loving and kind and open and supportive. Majority of the masculine have had to live in that unhealed version of themselves to do the manly things, right? The fighting, the killing, and all these other crazy aspects of living life here as a human. And there have been a lot of fucked up men. Not saying that there weren't fucked up females, because that's true too. But there's been a lot of fucked up men, and a lot of fucked up things have happened on this planet. And each and every one of us are holding on to that vibration. We're holding on to that trauma, in our energy fields of all these fucked up situations and scenarios. It's true. Unfortunately. So today we are going to clear that. We're going to start by lighting some sage in order to clear our space. I always like to clear and smudge first because, makes way for all that's happening, all that's going to transpire. So today I'm using sage and cedar bundle that I actually made myself. So we'll use that. Allow that to clear the space. Clear our energy, because we're going to get into some deep stuff. I already feel my own energy, like my own feminine is like fearful. It's like fearful of stepping into this, of working through it, of like experiencing it again. Because let's be real, for most of our history, it's been a very, very dark place. Men have persecuted men. Men have persecuted women. Men have persecuted the planet, right? Nature, everything, each other. It's just been anger and hatred just reflecting out. We're not there anymore. We're past that now. We're working through that. We're healing it. We're creating something new. I wanted to, if I can find my deck, of course, when I'm doing it, it goes missing. I was going to use my Divine Feminine deck, but she is hiding. So let's do a Lemuria deck. So Lemuria was the last civilization on this planet that was ruled by the feminine. Since then, the masculine has ruled this planet. The physical identity, the doing versus the being. So in regards to clearing the sphere of the masculine, what messages does Lemuria have for us? What message does Lemuria have for us in regards to clearing the fear of the masculine wounds? Our ancient future. We once lived in a more feminine-based society, and then we went hard the other way into this masculine-based society. And now we're coming back into balance. We're not going to be too far in the feminine. We're not going to be too far in the masculine. We're creating that equilibrium, that center space. So let's read what the book has to say. And then we can get into this clearing a little bit. Like I said, my energy is still like, I've honestly had this clearing on my heart for probably a week or two now, but it hadn't felt right yet. And now that I'm here doing it, my energy is like, I don't know. She's like still so scared. Wisdom from indigenous peoples, ancestors, holding the keys for the future, ancient remembering, bloodlines, how the past affects the future. A time to step up, timeless power symbols, activations, or powerful shifts. This card is imbued with activations for a new paradigm. You are now being showered with blessings in preparation for a transformation. We're shifting this shit, guys. It may be turbulent at times, but you will grow and heal through the coming journey. Partake in activities that help you drop into a meditative state as often as possible. I feel like I'm going to sneeze. This energy, once it starts moving. Use clearing tools to raise your vibration and don't get caught up on the destination. Focus on the journey and the experience. You can navigate a situation you have no experience with by being truly present. Integrity and intuition will be your guide. We're going into something new, right? And in this place of the new, we can't allow our fears of the past to be what's creating our future, right? This is what I speak about all the time. It's about shifting that internal reality in order to see the shift in our external. And if we're coming from a place of fear and lack, we're not going to be creating that new earth that we so divinely need and desire and deserve, because we all deserve this. Humanity deserves to have this quality, this beautiful new age, right? Because we have been pushed down for too long. Pushed down for too long. Today we're bringing out the big guns. One of my faves. The black tourmaline. She is so sorry if that's a little. It wasn't until I started doing this that I really got a little congested. Sometimes when we do the energy work in the spirit, it then decides to try and release in the physical as well. So it's recognizing that there are no coincidences. Nope. Everything is divine. And everything that we see and feel in the physical realm is just a manifestation of the spiritual, right? Okay. I want you to release the fear of the masculine. Immediately, I feel the masculine energy getting defensive. Like, oh, but that wasn't me, but, well, if I'm healthy, I'm not. Right? I can't be the problem. This shift of blame, right? It's not that we're blaming. That's not what we're doing here. We're clearing it. But this is the way that this masculine energy is feeling on the surface. The masculine energy wants to shift that blame and not take accountability for any of the darkness that it created on this planet. But we took this shift into the masculine, and since then, the planet has honestly been in turmoil. Keep getting the message from the masculine. I didn't know any better. I'd like to see you do any better. Like, that like defensive, that victim mentality coming up, right? And I feel like that's a lot of what that unhealed masculine energy is. That victim mentality, that blaming, that shifting of the blame. the whole 9 yards. But we're going to have to get through that and allow this masculine energy to hold itself accountable for the actions that have taken place on this planet. Because the masculine was in control. And there were a lot of unhealed men that did a lot of horrible things to everyone. Now, as I say this, and I'm allowing the black tourmaline to kind of like clear out that victim mentality, get past those old wounds, that shifting of blame. You're going to shift into the divine feminine. There's still an aspect of the male that we're going to come back to. But the feminine is what we're coming to now. Women for centuries have been objectified, persecuted, murdered, raped, brutalized. And our energy doesn't understand the difference, because to our energy, to unity, everyone is all, right? There is no distinction. There is no you and me. So we hold on to these wounds, especially us women. We hold on to these wounds and these fears of the masculine in our life because, honestly, for the most part, there have been very few healed masculine energy. So when we talk about our energy, we have divine and divine feminine and the divine masculine. And if we go a step further than that, we have the healed masculine, the unhealed masculine, and the healed feminine and the unhealed feminine, right? So we have the wounded and the wounded and the divine, right? The divine feminine versus the wounded feminine. The divine masculine versus the wounded masculine. And for most of history, the wounded masculine has reigned. He has taken his inner battle and he has taken it to the external world. Rather than that, taking that time to do the deep dive and work through his internal shit, he destroyed everything in his fucking path, including those that he was meant to care for. How many times, even in just recent history, have we heard about men going crazy and killing their wives and children? Imagine if we take stock of the whole humanity. Imagine how often of occurrence that is. This isn't meant to scare you. But sometimes we have to feel the fear and we have to understand these emotions and these beliefs, this programming, before we can release it. For centuries, the wounded masculine has ruled this planet, raping and pillaging as he goes. So the feminine has a really fucking hard time trusting that masculine, right? We still hold on to that deep, deep fear, deep ingrained fear of the masculine. That wounded masculine specifically. But again, it's really hard for our energy to tell the difference. Because when it comes to source and unity and the highest consciousness, Sorry, energy shifts. We are all one. So we're going to go in and we are going to clear some of these fears on the divine feminine side. I release the fear of the masculine. I release the fear of men. I release fear of his physical body near. For centuries, the divine masculine or the masculine in general has not been a safe place. For centuries, the masculine has been ruled by that wounded masculine, that angry, hurt, impatient masculine, as I said, has been taking that inner battle outside itself, blaming all those on the outside. And women have had to put up with it. We were their property for most of our time here. We were just an object to be used. Until they didn't want you anymore and threw you away. Right? And any time in previous history, women were standing in their power. They were doing the work, they were making their magic. And then the wounded masculine would come along and break it all apart, whether her physical body or her spiritual body. Such a deep, deep wound. We're going to just hold the black tourmaline here on our heart space, my heart space. And we're going to do a couple deep breaths. And we're just going to let the energy do the shifting. In the ethers, we can use our words to speak about what's going on sometimes, but sometimes it needs to shift in the energy more than it needs to shift and needs to be heard with our words. So let's take some deep breaths. When we take these deep breaths on our exhale, we're going to sigh and make some noise, allowing that sigh to be our release of any pent-up emotions. Immediately when I say this, feel the grief, fear. It's just the divine feminine is just sobbing. She has been attacked and brutalized and objectified for way too fucking long. So we're going to do this breath. We're going to do 3 deep breaths with a loud exhale. One last one. I still feel some resistance from the feminine. She's not willing to give it up that easy. And that's okay. We'll let her have our space. But I do feel like we need to step into that masculine now and do a little more healing on the masculine side. Men were attacked just as much as women by other men. Men have just as much reason to fear the masculine as we women do. It was those brutal fathers who held no love for their children. Those commanders, those officers who held no love for their soldiers. It was those other men, those wounded men who didn't know how to step into their emotions. They didn't know how to feel. They didn't know how to do the work. So they took it out on all those around them. They passed that down from generation to generation, the hatred and the anger. When really the only way that hatred and anger should go is towards themselves, right? Everything on the external is simply a projection of that internal. So everyone that wounded masculine was angry and hated everyone he projected that out onto was simply a reflection of himself. He hurt those closest to him. That wounded masculine. He hurt the feminine, which was the closest, the only thing next to the masculine. I'm feeling like this is like one of the deepest archetypes that we can go down into, right? It was the original split between the healthy masculine and the wounded masculine. It was when that masculine started to judge himself and stepped out of that divine masculine role and stepped into that wounded place, that victim mentality, the place where shame, guilt, and anger rule. And because he lived in this tumultuous internal world, he then created that on the outside and has lived through it for centuries. And that divine masculine blames himself for it. But when we blame ourselves, we allow ourselves to step into that victim mentality. We don't hold ourselves accountable and give ourselves grace for that moment. And I'm feeling like the wounded masculine is having a really hard time giving himself grace because he does not believe he deserves it for all the horrors that have been plagued upon this earth from the place of that wounded masculine. I feel like we got to do some extra smudging here to help it along. Because I understand the guilt. And I understand the shame. Because he should not have treated the world the way that he has. Raping and pillaging his way to some sort of wholeness that he believed he would get at the end. Not recognizing that that wholeness is already within if he chose to look. But he didn't. He chose to continue raping and pillaging and hurting and passing down that generational trauma. Because the wounded masculine was not willing to look at himself truthfully, because that wounded masculine was not willing to step out of that victim mentality and to hold himself accountable because of that. This world is the way that it is. But we need to recognize, including this wounded masculine, needs to recognize that this is his only way back to himself. You have to lose yourself first for a time in order to recognize that you must find yourself again. And this is how that is to come to pass. We've done the deep dive. We've been in the darkness. That wounded masculine has brutalized, raped, and pillaged every part of this planet that he possibly could already. Now he has the choice to shift it. And this is within each and every one of us. I know that you haven't raped and pillaged, I haven't raped and pillaged, but that wounded masculine has, and that wounded masculine is a part of each and every one of us. So now it's a time to accept it for where it was. Accept that wounded masculine. To see that hurt little boy inside who didn't have that safe space. That safe space is now. We now have that safe space for the masculine, for the men to express themselves. We have this safe space for them to figure out who the fuck they are and what the fuck they're doing. That safe space is now. No more holding back. No more hiding behind the anger or the fear. It is time for the divine masculine to wake the fuck up and take the reins back. The divine feminine has been standing in her power. She has been releasing those old wounds. She has been working through her fucking shit and getting to the other side. Now she can do that alone. She can. She is fucking powerful. She can do anything. But the real power happens. The real magic happens when she has her divine masculine standing beside her, supporting her and protecting from himself just as much as anyone else. It's taking those emotions and not allowing them to rule him. He's not going to allow that anger or that hurt to rule him any longer. He's going to take this rage, this anger, this grief and hatred, and it's going to be channeled properly. He's now going to have control over these emotions. He's going to feel them to the fullest, feel them to completion, and he will then channel and transmute them where they must be. Let's see. Because the time is now. It's true. The time is now to release all those old fears, to release the hurt, the anger, the judgment, the self-judgment especially. Self-judgment is so fucking dangerous, guys. So dangerous. Because remember, again, that internal reality is what's creating your external. So when you're judging yourself, you start judging those around you. And then you're pulling yourself out of that love vibration, right? That's when the darkness wins, is when we allow ourselves to stay in that fear, that lack, the anger, the hatred, all of those emotions. And it really stems from that fear of not being enough. That's where that anger stems from, that hatred, that judgment. It's fear of not being enough. And I feel like men have a super hard time with this one. They feel like they're not man enough. So they try and make up for it by being what society has told them men are. But that is the wounded masculine, my friend. That is not the healed masculine. The healed masculine is loving and patient, supportive and kind. He is strong, yet soft. And he is willing to stand aside and let his woman stand and show him the way, right? The divine feminine, my friends, we, the divine feminine, are the spirit holders. We hold creation in our wounds and we flow in the ethers like no man will ever be able to. They have a piece of the divine feminine within. They do. And they have that capability of doing that inner work, of floating in the spirit realm. But they must learn how to stand in that healed masculine in order to allow that healed feminine within them to thrive. Right? In order for the divine feminine to feel safe enough to come out, she must have her divine masculine counterpart there to protect her. Again, because of this age-old wound. Feel like part of the time I feel like I'm speaking a bunch of gibberish. But the energy tells me that it's doing the work. Okay, let's do some releases in that masculine. Excuse me. I release the fear of myself. I release the fear of standing in my power. I release the fear of looking weak. I release the fear of not being enough. I release the fear of not being strong enough to protect the ones I love. I feel like that's where a lot of that wounded masculine comes from. That fear of not being enough. That fear of being weak. That fear of not being strong enough. That fear of not being able to keep those close to him safe. And as the masculine will sometimes try and do, there's that aspect of trying to control. And when things don't go the way that wounded masculine wants, that's when the anger and frustration comes out. That's when those feelings of not being enough manifest into reality and cause that anger and frustration at themselves, which is then projected outwards. But we were releasing that. This might have been The way that the masculine kept themselves together, the way that they managed to survive on this terrain and this simulation, no longer. It is now time to release the old ways. Once that masculine is able to release his own fear of himself, once he's able to release the fear of himself, it will no longer manifest in the physical. We release the fear of the masculine. We release the fear of his subjugation. We release the fear of his wrath, of his anger, of his frustration and self-judgments projected onto those he faces. We allow the release of all these stuck, stagnant emotions, these beliefs, and all this generational trauma. We release it into the ethers. We release it back to love. We understand. And we send love and healing. Now is the time to shift our reality. Now is the time to make that change. Now is the time to take that radical self-accountability. To know that we can shift our external reality once we do that internal work. And we are creating the space. We are creating the space for the masculine to do so. Creating all this space in that heart chakra. Creating the tunnel from the heart chakra down into that solar plexus, into that powerhouse. Opening up down into that sacral, into that creativity, into that manifesting space, and then back down into that root that has been cut off for way too long. We're reconnecting Mama Gaia and Father Sky. For too long, they have been disconnected. Now is the time to heal that connection. And how do we do that? But healing that connection. We must each take a look at ourselves. We both have that feminine and masculine within us. When you're coming from your masculine energy, when you're doing the things, when you are, where is it coming from? Is it coming from that wounded masculine, or is it coming from that healed masculine? And if it's not coming from that healed masculine, we need to investigate a little bit more. Our masculine has been programmed for way too fucking long. He's been told that he's not enough. At the same time, being told he's too much. He's been taught not to experience or feel his emotions. Yet his dark emotions rule him. So we right now are working to release this. Once we release this part of the puzzle, it will make way for others to do the same and for that integration between the feminine and the masculine to start. We must heal that wounded masculine in order for that divine masculine to find his counterpart, the feminine. In order for them to link and merge, to integrate the duality into unity, we must heal each of the parts. You're just hopping on now, make sure that you watch from the beginning. This is some pretty deep stuff and it may not resonate for all, but those that are meant to will. Feels just that little bit better, that connection. It's like we're making way for that divine feminine and that divine masculine to start connecting with each other, to start a conversation in the energy, in the ethers. It's as if that they've been sitting like facing opposite ways with their hands crossed over their chests, just angry at each other. We've shifted it now, and we are consciously shifting it so that they can merge and converse with one another. It has been way too fucking long that we have been in this duality, right? When that wounded masculine has control, we live in duality. But when we integrate that wounded masculine, we give him love and acceptance and aid him in his shift and tell him that he is enough. When we do this, we create something new. Because that makes way for these divine healed versions of ourselves to create that true magic. To create that synergy of energy. Create unity out of the duality that we've been tricked into believing in all. Right? That's all this simulation is. It's a test. We are source incarnate, experiencing itself in so many different fractals. And we are finally starting to remember who the fuck we really are and what the fuck we really are. We are energy. We are divine. And we have the choice. We have the choice to create that world we've always wanted, to create utopia. And that choice begins with yourself. What timeline do you want? It's a real question. Because you're choosing your timeline every moment. So which one are you wanting to land in? Are you going to allow that wounded self of yours to continue causing a ruckus? That's what happens when we step into that victim mindset. That's what happens when we point the blame at others, when we judge others. Because all there really is yourself. Everything outside of you is just a reflection of what's going on inside of you. So once you're able to step back and notice this, you can start to see the lessons and the places that need to be healed. Every trigger you experience is just leading you to more healing. Trust me, it's not hard to it's hard to start. But once you're able to take that radical self-accountability, once you're able to recognize that shadow within you and love yourself anyways, that's where the magic happens. That's when we start to shift our interior, our internal reality in order to shift our external world. And this is what lights me the fuck on fire, because I know that that is our purpose here on this planet, is to really learn ourselves. Who are you? Who are you behind all those limiting beliefs? Behind all that societal programming? Behind all those stuck and stagnant emotions that you weren't allowed to feel? Who are you? Good question, right? If these sorts of questions light you on fire and you actually watched this whole video, congratulations. Reach out, because I always love to have these conversations. My job here is to aid others in doing this deep dive into yourself. Sometimes you need some help to start. I needed help to start, that's for fucking sure. I wouldn't be where I am if I just decided to try and do it all myself. I didn't even know what the fuck all of this was. Anywho, thank you so much for joining me. If you watch till the end, you get a gold medal. We are consciously creating unity out of the duality that we have been dealt. We are healing those wounded parts of ourselves and putting the fucking pieces back together. We are shifting. We are shifting realities because that is our job here as these multidimensional souls. We are meant to shift these timelines to create something magical. Let me know in the comments if any of this resonated with you, or if you think I'm a lunatic. Either way, I'll love to hear it. Sending you all so much love, and know that you are whole just as you are. That feeling of not being enough, that's a lie to keep you small. Until next time.